My name is Elden Nielsen. I'm 80 years old and I was born in Malad, Idaho.
My full name is Joan Marie Tubby Nielsen, and I am 79 years old, and I live in Malad, Idaho.
Charles Nielsen is my father. He's a man who believes in God, believes in the hereafter, and works every day for that purpose. My mother is Ina Peterson Nielsen. She was born in Brigham, and mother and dad got married and they moved to Holbrook. And then they had 8 children. My dad had a terrible habit. He got up at 4 o'clock every morning. He would have more work done by noon than most people worked all day long. He was a hard worker. He believed that hard work is what kept you young and strong and healthy. Our neighbor down the street, 4 houses down, he was in the legislature, and he had to get up early at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive to Boise. And he went over to the picture window in front of his house, and he told his wife, he says, "This is one time I'm going to call Charlie and get him out of bed." And as he was dialing the phone, my dad and my brother come up around the corner and drove up past his house. Dad, he had a bad habit of calling people at 4 o'clock in the morning because he had things on his mind, and that's what he did. And most people didn't mind because he had important questions to ask. But that's the way they lived. And then they'd go square dancing at night, and they'd stay out till 10 o'clock at night. So a lot of nights he'd only get about 4 hours sleep. I asked him, I says, "How come you didn't go to town and get a job?" He says, "I wanted to have something to be able to pass to my children. And a job in town don't give you that." So he went to farming. My one brother, he bought the farm in Malad, and I bought the farm in Holbrook. My dad always said, "I don't want to rust out, I want to wear out." And that's the way he lived his life. He worked every day, and he worked hard. He taught his boys how to work. He taught his girls how to work. He loved work. He said, "It's the staff of life is work." He says, "That keeps you healthy and keeps your mind strong." We got up in the morning. Mother would call us to get us up because Dad was always already out doing something. We'd go out and help Dad finish the chores. And when we come in, Mother always had a big breakfast. We ate a big breakfast because we wouldn't stop for dinner. We'd work right on through till night. My favorite breakfast was pancakes with a fried egg in between each pancake. That was my favorite breakfast. My mother loved genealogy work. She always had a card table in the front room, and she always had her genealogy out on the front room. You had to go the kitchen through the front room to the outdoor, and she'd say, "Come over here." And I'd go over there, and she'd start telling me about those people. It's the genealogy she was doing. She knew them personally, and so she'd tell me about them. And young teenager, I didn't have time for all that kind of stuff. Mother and Dad, they went to the Logan Temple, is where they done temple work. They had a goal in their life to do 10,000 names. And they didn't. They fell a little short. They only did 9,000. But that's how many names they done. Stake president says, "You're going to be busy." And they said, "What for?" And they says, "Because when you go through the veil, they'll be there to greet you for what you've done for them." They was kind of looking forward to that. And they're both over there now. So most people, when they go through the temple, they have to be helped along a little bit because there's certain words you have to say. And my parents, when they went through the temple, they knew it off by heart. They never had to be coached any time of what to say and when to say it. But my dad, he'd worked in the temple. He worked in through his life so that he could do that. And when time come and I took over the farm, then he went to the temple. My mother had passed away and he remarried, and they worked in the temple for 1 year, and then they have to stand up and get down a lot in the temple. She is quite heavy, and she couldn't do that. She had to quit. So my dad kept going for 2 more years, and he loved every minute of it. His brother, Uncle Howard, he's my uncle. He's Dad's brother-in-law. They had a bunch of names, so they took him over to the temple to give to the temple. Walked up the hall, up the sidewalk, and went to go in the temple, and there was a man that come out of the bushes, I guess. He come out of the temple and opened the door and went in. And my dad and Uncle Howard went in through the door and got into the temple. And one of the temple presidents, he was there, and he says, "How did you get in this temple? The doors are all locked. How did you get in here?" He says, "Well, there's a man come up and we just followed him in." He says, "There's no men here. We're the only men here." And they looked through the doors to see if he was in the temple. And he was gone. He wasn't there. It had been somebody that had come in, and just for that purpose, to guide Dad and Uncle Howard in. And then after he got in, he disappeared. So that was a testimony to them that the work they was doing was for real and important. There was about 3 of my brothers. We'd go deer hunting with my dad. For Christmas, they all got 30-06s. They're just a high-powered rifle. It knocks the deer down. You hit them with a 30-06, they don't get up. When I was graduated, my dad gave me a 30-30. That's a lot smaller gun. I don't know why. So I had to aim for their heads, because when I hit them in the head with a 30-30, they didn't get up. I didn't mind. I just loved being around my dad. When I was growing up, we'd go out on the farm, and I loved farming. I thought I loved farming. But actually, I didn't love farming. I loved being around my dad. I found that out after my dad had passed away. I found that out that farming wasn't, I liked to farm, but I didn't love it as, I thought I loved farming, but I didn't. I just loved being around my father. He was an honest man and a hard worker, and when we worked around him, he done his share and half of ours. That's the kind he was. We had, here in Malad, we come to Malad, we raised sugar beets. And there was a farmer out to the west, just before you go up the mountains, and he had 100 acres of sugar beets. And he had a lot of Mexicans. They'd come up from Mexico during the summer, and then they said they would go back and work for the King Ranch in Texas. But anyway, they'd come and they'd count the rows, how many rows they did. And then they'd come to my dad and ask him to figure out how much money they got coming. Because sometimes the owners of the other land wouldn't tell them the truth. And they said, Charlie Nielsen says is what it is. He said, you didn't have to worry about him trying to cheat you.
My dad was Ralph Tubby. He was born and raised in Malad on a farm. Him and his brother had 1,000 head of sheep. And so us kids got to herd the sheep all the time. We would ride an old horse named Steele, and we'd have to go up the hills, and there was 4 of us, so we wouldn't have a saddle, so we'd go up the hills and fall off the back end of the horse. We just had a lot of fun herding the sheep. Dad was still a farmer when he became the Oneida County assessor, and he held that job for 31 years. The year after my mom passed away, he had open heart surgery, and he stayed with us for a little while, and then he went home and lived alone. But we had a lot of good stories and a lot of fun on the farm. He fed the horses in the meadow with horses and hay rack, and so in the winter we'd ride the sleigh behind the back and have lots of fun. His brother and her wife and kids lived close by, so we always had the cousins to play with, and we always did everything. And we went ice skating in the winter down in the meadow because the water would form and cause an ice rink for us. And Dad would build a little fire for us so we could keep warm. I hated to ice skate. I had weak ankles, and I fell down a lot. My dad taught us hard work and to be honest. We used to go to Ogden once a year to Christmas shop. And I think it was in Woolworths. We went in there and we checked out, and my dad got outside and he looked and he said, they gave me too much change back. So he went back in and told them, and they were so busy and they were pretty irritated that he took up their time to return that money. And because it was Christmas time and they were busy. But anyway, he returned that money. It wasn't a lot, but he returned it. My mom's name was Mary Jane Jones, and she was born in Malad also. And she was a very hard worker. She cooked all of our meals, homemade meals. We didn't have just one dessert, we always had 2. We had cake and ice cream, or pie and ice cream, or cookies and ice cream, or something. And she would make hot rolls or bread, and at night when she got home from work, she was a beautician and worked in town. She would get preparations ready at night, and then put a roast in the oven and maybe bake potatoes or something, because we always had to feed about 15 hay men all summer long. And so she did all of this. And when she was just, I'm not sure, 19, 20, something like that, she got rheumatic fever, and it damaged her heart. And so she had heart problems all her life. My mother had birthday parties for her every year. We all went down there. And we got together every holiday with either at my mom's house or my Aunt Maud's house, her sister. And we usually had 30 or 40 people there all the time, because all the cousins and relatives would come. We just had lots of fun. We made lots of messes for everybody to clean up. But my mom had an open heart surgery when she was 49. And President Russell M. Nelson was her surgeon. And so I met him when I was 23. And she got along pretty good for those 6 years, and then she had to have another one. And this time she never got out of the hospital. She was there for 4.5 months before she passed away. And I was 30 years old, and I was 4 months pregnant with Lorna. So it was a hard time. When your mother passes away, it changes everything, because she was the one that held everything together. We still went to my Aunt Maud's for meals and that and stuff, but it was never the same. I had to start doing everything. I started doing all the cooking and having people at my house, and it was fun. I learned how to cook. My mom was a good person. She helped her mom a lot, but like I said, my mom died at age 56, and her mom lived till almost 99, and her one sister lived to be 96, and the other one was 99 and a half. So they all lived long. If my mom hadn't had a bad heart, she'd probably lived that long too. So my favorite thing about my mom was she was always happy. Even though she was sick and in pain a lot, she never complained.